Hey, what's going on, crew? Welcome to another episode of the 20 Percenters podcast. Mike Anders here, coming to you with the founder, president, CEO of Legacy of Results, Alex Aanderud, my executive coach and NLP practitioner. For those of you who don't know, NLP is Neurolingustic Programming. And I have to introduce you now that the formalities are out of the way, in a more authentic way. When I met you at the 100K journey with Travis and Minky, and we were getting to know each other, shaking hands and whatnot, the first logical question is, oh, what do you do? What brings you here? And you introduce yourself as a professional mindfucker.
Yes.
At first I was interested, and then you had my attention. So, and now we're working together, and I've had some very significant breakthroughs as a result of the work that we've done up to this point, and we have obviously a lot more to do as we meet week to week. But I'd love to give everybody a background on your journey and how you found your way into NLP, and then turn that into a career.
Yeah, definitely. I actually started off NLP kind of on accident. Mm-hmm. In middle school, I was told I'd never graduate high school. The best I could hope for is that I'd, work at McDonald's someday. And it was interesting because I was having medical issues. I was having 40 to 50 seizures a day, lots of different issues going on. Mm. And flash forward, I graduated on time. Not only that, I went on to study engineering and started working at Boeing as an engineer, supporting experimental flight tests for Boeing in the U.S. military. And I was doing a lot of speaking gigs. So I was traveling around and speaking about, okay, well, how did you do it, mm-hmm. right? And there was a training called Presenting Magically. And I was trying to become a better presenter. So I went and I took this class. And it explained why every single speech that went well, and every single one that bombed. And mm-hmm. it was something called NLP.
Okay.
I'm like, shit, I need more.
Sure. Okay.
So I signed up for the practitioner level training. And at the time, the practitioner level training was like a 7-day class. And when I went, the week before I went, I was working at Boeing, and I got a performance evaluation that says does not meet expectations. Basically, I had a corrective action plan, and if I didn't learn to work well with others, I was going to get fired.
Okay.
Went, took the first level training, the practitioner training, mm-hmm. got promoted 4 times the next year.
Oh my God.
Took the next level training, started flying all over the country because they could put me into any situation and I could solve problems that most people couldn't because I could communicate and get people working together.
Sure.
NLP is Neurolinguistic Programming, is the study of how language affects the conscious and the unconscious mind. So really it's about becoming more flexible in your communication to accurately be able to communicate with people and with yourself.
Okay.
And so went in, did that, took the trainer's training, so certified trainer of NLP, coach, quit smoking specialist, got all these different certifications. And one day I was at a training down in California, and I went, I got to get out. I got to get out of Boeing. So I called my wife. Okay. I said, hey, I want to quit my job. I'm the sole, I'm like bringing in the money for the family. And she says, okay. And then starts telling me a story about the cat. I'm like, are you concerned? She's like, no, not really. I trust you. Just whatever. I'm like, oh. So I did it. I bit the bullet. I jumped in. Few years, like about a year and a half earlier, I was becoming disenchanted with Boeing, but at the same time I was working with the NLP. I had a woman who came in to see me to quit smoking. And I guarantee my results. Everything I do, guarantee results. She left, was not successful. She came back in for her follow-up session, found out the reason why she was still smoking was her 6-year-old goddaughter had been killed by a stray bullet in Baltimore. Tears coming down her face. She couldn't say her name. After an hour and a half, she was laughing and telling me stories about Isabel, gave me a big hug, said, thank you for giving me my memories back.
Wow.
That was the moment I went, I need out. Took me about a year and a half to finally go, I got to walk away.
Mm-hmm. How tough was that for you? Because, I mean, obviously there's leaving the assumed comfort of a steady paycheck to rebuild something. How big was the gap between leaving the comfort of Boeing, stressful as it may have been, and building your practice?
Well, it was basically I quit Boeing and then I went, oh shit, I got to get money because I didn't put stuff away that I needed to. Uh-huh. And I took this class. It was a Build Your Business class by the Empowerment Partnership and went through all of this different process with them and re-engineered it. Really wasn't successful for about a year. We had a lot of problems. Got to a point where we were living in a hotel. week to week at one of those like extended stay hotels. And we had to choose, do we pay our car payment or do we pay our rent? Because if we don't pay our rent, then we're out. But if we don't pay our car payment and we lose our car and the next week we can't pay our rent, we don't have a place to stay. So it's like, what do we do?
Right.
And it was just, okay, I got to figure this out. And I got to spend a lot of time working on me. I mean, the reason why I am in NLP is because it has changed my life, start to stop. There's not an aspect of my life that has not been affected. Went through, applied a lot of the skills, the learnings, and in about 3 months, I had a $20,000 day.
That's going to feel good.
Yeah. Got back up on my feet, got going. But the one thing that has never crossed my mind is any regret about walking away. There's been a lot of challenges, a lot of struggles.
Sure.
But the difference that I make in people's lives, the look in the eye specifically when they go, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's not about what they can achieve, but helping them believe that it's possible. That's what it's about.
Well, after you've helped them create that belief, I mean, the next thing is they have to make a choice, right?
Right.
And as I'm discovering and working with you, there's layers to this. And as part of our process, the very first thing is our breakthrough session. And I will be the first to tell anybody it is one of the most exhausting processes ever. But, for just speaking for me, having done, close to 15 years of the deep work, asking the uncomfortable questions and, investing in coaching and seminar after seminar, acknowledging that I have these blocks or these issues. What the breakthrough session with you did for me was it provided context to the block. And with that newfound context, I was really able to leave it in the past.
Yeah.
Explain the concept of mental and emotional release therapy.
So the basic concept of mental and emotional release therapy, the idea is that emotions exist on a temporal plane. So they're based on time. And the reason why you hold on to negative emotions is because they serve a purpose. They've helped you in some way. I mean, the anger, let's do fear. Fear protects you because it keeps you from doing the thing that you were afraid of, right? Hurt protects you because it doesn't allow you to get hurt again. But at the same point, it's constantly weighing on your system. But if instead you go back and you reevaluate it and learn the lesson, there's no reason to hold on to that hurt. There's no reason to hold on to that fear. It allows you to move forward and preserve the body, while at the same time letting go of the negative emotion. So anxiety is an easy one to explain because most people just get this. Can anxiety exist in the past? Can you be anxious about something that's already happened?
No.
Right? So if I take you after the successful completion, I use some linguistic patterns, all of a sudden your brain goes, hey, wait a minute, it doesn't belong back there. So it goes and it's gone. It short circuits the neurology.
Right.
Same thing if you go before you feel guilty about something. You can't feel guilty about something you haven't done. Now, I have people challenge me. They go, oh, but I thought about it and I felt guilty that I thought about it. Right. So you felt guilty that you thought about it, which is
Still
in the past.
tense, yeah.
Or you imagined it having happened and then feel guilty because it happened because you imagined it.
Sure.
So we already use these. We use them to install pain, so why not use them to get rid of pain?
Right.
Does that make sense? The basic premise of MER and NLP and pretty much all personal development techniques, there was a study in 2000 commissioned by Intermetrics that looked at the most successful people in their different roles, and they found that there weren't a set of natural skills that they all had, but there were 2 acquired skills that every single one had. One was self-awareness. They knew their strengths, they knew their weaknesses. And 2 was authenticity. They created an environment in which they could lean on their strengths to be successful, and their success did not require their leaning on their weakness.
Okay.
Right? They just lucked into a role where the right pieces fell in, or they got a team of people. So there's a person who handles that aspect of my business because that's not me, right?
Right.
That's the people who have been most successful. NLP, MER, all of the different personal development techniques are about increasing your self-awareness and letting go of everything that isn't you. The baggage isn't who you are. The behavior isn't who you are. there's something that you've adapted because it allowed you to get to where you are right now.
Sure.
So what we look for in the conversation, the breakthrough session, is you're looking for context, you're looking for structure, you're looking for patterns. Really what you're looking for is the process, the pattern that they have. Because if I can identify the pattern you're running, more importantly, if you can identify the pattern you're running, you can interrupt the pattern.
Right.
And if you interrupt the pattern, you can create a new pattern, which will lead you to better success.
I read a book just recently for 20%ers, actually, called The Compound Effect.
Yep.
And in that book, he talks about habits. And when we're talking about getting rid of negative habits or habits that are not productive, he talks about instead of trying to get rid of it, replacing it. Is that also a mechanism in NLP?
Oh, it's not just a mechanism in NLP. It's a very important aspect because in Huna, which is a Hawaiian energy, one of the things they talk about in their philosophy is that nature abhors a vacuum.
Okay.
Well, think about it. If there's nothing in do you have a drawer that's empty at your house?
No.
Do you have a drawer that probably should be empty in your house?
Absolutely.
Because when you have an empty space, you fill it. People who buy a bigger house buy more stuff to fill their space. If you delete a negative habit, what it does is it leaves a void, and your unconscious mind does not like the void and wants to replace it. So it'll either put in a new habit in its place, or it will bring back the old habit, or it'll create something else. So, tell me what not to do. There's infinite options on what to do.
Sure. Right.
Right.
I was actually working with one of my clients yesterday, and with regards to how he perceives his performance on the field.
Yeah.
And I was walking him through a lot as I'm coaching now and I'm becoming more in tune of what we're doing. I see how that manifests in what I do professionally. And we're walking through this process of that which you focus on most, positive or negative, is what you're going to attract, right? So when we were talking about, he's a football player. So we're talking about the way he approaches the point of contact when he goes to make a tackle. I said, are you thinking about running through the ball carrier and finishing the play, or are you thinking about not getting run over? Right?
Right.
The desired outcome is the same. The actual outcome tends to be different. The way you approach that same scenario, thinking that you're running him over versus not getting run over, are two totally different approaches.
Right. The unconscious mind doesn't process a negative. So if I tell you don't think of blue tree, in order to not think of the blue tree, you have to first create the blue tree in order to negate it. And the more energy you focus on creating the not, the more that image is what you're holding. You don't attract what you think you want. You attract what you think. You attract what you put your energy into. So, like, for instance, a very simple health and fitness, right? People who gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, it's because they're motivated by what they want to lose, not what they want to gain. So they're moving away from being fat, right? I did it for years. I lost 100 pounds in a year after I got married, and I've kept most of it off. And the reason why is because it's about being healthy and fit. But for years, I yo-yoed. And it was because I didn't want to be that fat anymore. But the further I got away, the less motivation there was. Two magnets pushing away from each other. The further you get away, the less motivation. You flip it around, the closer you get, the more pull there is. So when you're focused on what you want, you get close. You got to set a new goal, keep it moving forward, keep that momentum building. But like you said, that undesired outcome, you put a not in front of your undesired outcome, you're still focusing on your undesired outcome.
And we even talked about that in our initial conversation regarding whether or not we're going to move forward with our process. And one of the things that you helped me identify was how I'm motivated, in that with all the success that I've experienced up to this point, there's still so much left on the table because my primary motivator was pain, right? The further I got away from pain, the more comfortable I became, the less motivated I became. So either through some kind of self-sabotage or just pumping the brakes really, really hard, I came closer to that pain point. And so there's that yo-yo, but it's, significant steps backwards and then a catapult forward, as opposed to this steady, gradual climb, and eventually, as we're working together, this exponential increase. And I was like, and I'm going back and I'm playing the tape of my life, and is this just business or is it just me? And another thing that I've come to realize is in myself, and as I'm watching others that I coach, how you do this thing is how you do everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so how is it, as you're working through this process, what are the things that show up the most that stunt people's growth?
The difference between cause and effect and fault and blame.
Okay.
So I'm driving down the road. Or you're driving down the road. You stop at a red light.
Yep.
Car plows in to the back end of you. Who's at fault? Who caused the accident?
They did.
Right. Legally, they are at fault for the accident. They are responsible, and there's liability there. I get that. But you answered one of two questions. I said, who's at fault and who caused the accident? You only answered who's at fault. You got in your car. You drove the route. You stopped at the light. I'm not saying you did anything wrong.
Sure.
But people focus on the things they can't control instead of the aspects that they can. When I was an engineer supporting experimental flight tests for Boeing and the U.S. military, you're flying through the air. You can't control the wind.
Right.
Right? But we can. We create a wind tunnel and we test the wind tunnel. But when you're flying, you negate that factor because it's not something you have control over.
Sure.
One of the things we're taught is you have to identify which variables you can control. So there's an idea of cause and effect.
Right.
If you take responsibility for everything in your life, it's humbling because you caused everything that's happened in your life.
Sure.
But it's empowering because it means you can change anything in your life. That's, I think, the number one thing that hiccups people. I think the second thing is they have no idea what they really want.
Right.
They have no idea. They have a vague generalization of I want to be successful, but they haven't defined what success looks like. They haven't defined what is success to them.
Right.
They've measured it off of everyone else, or they have some vague concept. The third thing is that they're not willing to take the action necessary. They're not willing to take the action necessary in order to achieve the success.
Right.
In order to get, you have to let go. You have to let go of something in order. If you want to get from point A to point B, you got to leave point A. It's that simple.
Sure.
But a lot of times people aren't willing to give up their excuses. They're not willing to give up their stories. They're not willing to give up the friends that are encouraging them. They're not willing to give up the donut that they want or the Starbucks coffee that they have to have when they're trying to get their finances squared away. Like, they're not willing to give up what they need to in order to achieve success.
Sure.
The last one is that they don't focus.
Okay.
There's an idea that like a laser beam can cut through a wall and you're either a light or a laser beam. Have you heard this before?
No.
Okay. So light in and of itself is powerful. A light bulb like we have around us can light up the room. But if you focus the energy of light, you can go through a brick wall because the laser beam has that intensity. It can cut through, right?
Sure.
Lasers cut things all the time. But there's a time for a light and there's a time for a laser. Sometimes you need to light the path.
Right.
Sometimes you just need to cut through it.
Okay. Sure.
Right.
Makes sense.
But people don't focus on what they want. Something comes up and it distracts them, or they move to a new thing, or they stumble and they go, "Oh shit, I stumbled. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I just never can." And I don't want to get run over again. So they have a bad experience. They got ran over one time, and so instead of focusing on getting over to that other side and running that guy over, now they have a negative experience and they hold on to that negative experience. And instead of focusing on what they want, they focus on what they don't want, and they use that, and it hinders their ability to move forward.
Sure. So what are some really tangible mechanisms that somebody can impart almost immediately to, at the very least, get that first step?
Very first step is to recognize that you are responsible for the world you create. There's a book, Flow, by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And for the people who are listening, if you want to know how to spell that, it's FLOW.
Okay.
But the book Flow, he talks about the idea that like you're in that state, right? You're in the flow. Everything's going. There's more than 2 million bits of information coming in, and at any given time, you process 126 bits. That's the equivalent of a dump truck of toothpicks pouring out around you. You reach out, you grab a handful, and you go, this is real. This is all that real. We delete, we distort, we generalize the information, create an internal representation, and that image you hold in your head is what you think is reality.
Holy shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Reality isn't fact. So I'm going to take this. Here we go. I'm holding a mug. Prove to me that's real. See it, right? See it, optical nerve into the brain. Prove it's real outside of your head. You can reach up and touch it, right?
Right.
Well, we're going to ignore quantum physics and the fact that you're not actually touching it. It's an electromagnetic disbursement of energy. Processes through your neural system into your brain, and then you hallucinate that you're feeling it down here.
Okay.
But again, it's happening in your head. I said prove it's real outside of your head. Well, we all agree with you that this cup is real, right?
Right.
But the only way you know we agree with you is because you're observing it, which is, again, happening inside your head. You can't prove anything exists outside of your head, and as such, your reality isn't fact, it's perception, which means it's completely negotiable. So what people need to realize, that the way you take that first step is to take ownership of the reality you're creating. Quit looking at what everyone else is doing to you, what the environment's doing to you, what you can't control, and focus on what action I can take. What can I do right now that will get me in a different path than I'm headed? Does that make sense?
Sure. That ownership piece is hard, man.
It's scary, right?
It's fucking terrifying. Through 20 percenters, we've had a number of people, that have turned their side hustle into their main gig. And, 20 percenters has been around for almost 2.5 years now. And, some of those folks have been around for at the very least 18 months of it. The time it took to make that leap, we've been meeting every month for 30 months. The time it took to finally make that leap was, it took forever, and it was this, this nudge, this poke, this prod, the logic, it makes sense. We extrapolated timelines, you could get back to baseline in 60 days if you, attack it this way, strategize and blah, 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 blah. But we are not logical beings. We are the most fucked up emotional creatures on the planet. And, when it comes to that turning the corner and making that pivot in life, the opportunity has to be significantly greater than perceptively than the one you currently stand in, or the pain of being in your current position has got to be so great that the risk is worth it. And it doesn't have to be that way.
You see, I think that the pain is actually really a useful tool
Sure,
to
absolutely.
get you out of the mud, get you moving. But as soon as you're moving, you got to switch your focus. You got to focus on where you want to go. I use pain all the time because it's like a beach ball. You push it under the water because then it'll shoot up. You light up the pain and get someone taking action. Cool, now let's focus on what you want and get you moving in the right direction.
Right.
You flip it and get them going.
You had me read Narcissism and Radical Honesty. And those two books put a lot of things in perspective. In that, I realized that crazy is normal. And normal, being, catering to the masses is actually the crazy thing to do. But also, there is a very significant process that would benefit everybody, especially that's interested in doing the deep work. And that's the process of unlearning, right? And being able to shift gears and live life make the conscious decision to live life on your own terms. Right. One of the things that is pointed out over and over and over again in radical honesty is that ownership piece, and also understanding, absolving your parents, for example, of the blame for raising you, raising us, raising me, in the image of who they think I should have been. What they thought would have been successful, and asking yourself the tough questions, going through the deep work, and really going back far enough to where those lessons were learned, the stuff that we hang on to that inhibits us now, and either learning the lesson and keeping it with us, or again, learning the lesson and letting it go. That unlearning process is extremely difficult.
I love the quote. I'm sure it's misquoted many times, but it's like was it Michelangelo? How did you create David? And, I started chipping away anything that wasn't David. Right? It's not about creating. It's about uncreating everything that you're not.
Mm-hmm. So, I just find the whole, when it comes to unlearning, like you said, a lot of the things that inhibit us in the here and now were the things that protected us at one point. And, those lessons exist on the temporal plane.
Right.
Walk us through the process of identifying the things on that timeline.
I think part of it comes to root cause analysis. I go back to engineering because I kind of play both fields. I play the psychology and the engineering side.
Sure.
But it's called the 5 whys.
Okay.
Okay. So why? You just keep asking yourself why. Why is a great question for digging up baggage.
As I've experienced.
It is a horrible question. It's one of the most useless questions you can ask. Why? Because why indicates give me your story.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Why? Tell yourself a story. And you dig down. What you're looking for is pattern. So look at all the different experiences. What's similar to this? Okay, what other situations? Okay, why did I respond that way? And you just start looking, and what you're looking for is the patterns that you're running. Because it's not the context. Like, for instance, I'm working with this one person, and they drive me absolutely nuts. And they do something, and then I tell them, hey, this was a problem, and this was a problem, and this is a problem, and I identify these different problems. And they think they're all individual. And I go, no. This is a pattern you're running. Let me show you how these interact.
Sure.
As you become aware of your patterns, It gives you the opportunity to do a pattern interrupt.
Okay.
So you're asking about like, okay, how do you go back and identify what are these blocks from the time when you don't know? You ask yourself a bunch of questions, or you get somebody to ask you questions, because it's hard sometimes in your stuff.
Yeah.
To take the objective view to see it. Mm-hmm. But you have to step out of your story and go, wait a minute, let me analyze this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do, but you can.
Sure.
There's been numerous times where it's like something has happened, and most people go, well, how do you handle that kind of situation? And I go, you have to assume that the other person is behaving with positive intent, and that my reaction is caused by something inside, not because of what they did. So then you start going, okay, so why am I responding this way? Mm-hmm. Because there are people, if I said, have you ever heard the song that never ends?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if I suggested that you listen to that for an hour, or if I subjected you and made you listen to that for an hour, how would you feel?
I'd want to blow my brains out.
Right. Right? But yet I listened to it, and I listened to it for half an hour every day on my way to work when I was living out in St. Louis. Why? Because I was done at Boeing, and I needed something that was a pattern interrupt. So I listened to that. But if I listened to it and I enjoyed it, and it got to a point where I actually enjoyed listening to the song, you listen to it, you want to blow the brains out. It's not the song that's the problem. Because we have two different experiences. If the song itself was the problem, it would create the same response in every single person.
Sure.
if the response differs from person to person, you own your response. So you got to start looking at, okay, why am I responding this way? What is it about it? Well, it annoys me. Well, what annoys you? It's repetitive. But don't you do your workout every day? Isn't that repetitive? I mean, you get up every day. What? Oh, man, I'm just not going to wake up today. That doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
So repetitiveness in and of itself isn't the problem. So what is it about the repetitiveness that's the problem? It's an auditory repetitive. Okay, so the auditory repetitive, do you ever listen to the same song again and again and again? Well, yeah, okay. So what's the difference then? So what you do is you start narrowing down where is the problem? Where is it that causes you to choose to be upset? Where is it that causes you to choose to react that way?
Yeah.
Because the song isn't the problem. Your response is.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
No, absolutely. And it brings me to another point that's brought up in Radical Honesty, in that the withholding of emotion, right, is arguably the number, top 3 killers of us as humans is because of all the things that become toxic as a result of the withholding of negative emotion, right? And the anecdote that sticks out the most to me is the anger emotion, right? We are told to express everything south of anger: frustration, sadness, disappointment, right? These very somber emotions, right? But anger in and of itself is so volatile, right?
Right.
The way we're taught it's expressed, right? That nuclear explosion of that scene in public, that outburst, and he argues that that's actually the healthiest expression of anger. And resentment, and at the very least, the fallout of that blow up, we both know where we stand, right?
Right.
At the very least. And if you're comfortable enough with that expression of anger, often enough, the detonation of that fuse becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point that it's just a very frank, hey, you're stepping on my toes, man, as opposed to this big, right. And he mentions that the problem with the withholding of anger is that when you do blow up, it's never with the person you're supposed to blow up at.
Right. You see, what happens is that we experience an emotion, we put it in a bag, we experience it, we put it in it. Someone goes, oh, look, he's angry. This is the angry bag. And every time you experience something that's neurologically similar, it goes in and that entire bag lights up. And you can hold it for so long, but the people who have the shortest fuse are the people who have a very big bag. And you're not responding to the event, you're responding to what that event lights up in everything else. So what it does is when you experience an event, and I'm sure everybody can relate to this, something happens and it triggers a memory, right? You've had that experience. When you experience an anger, what happens is it triggers all of the related anger that hasn't been resolved.
Right.
It goes, oh, this is how I feel, right?
Right.
Now, at the same point, anger in and of itself isn't the problem. There's been numerous studies that show that the emotion of any physical experience of emotion lasts for up to 90 seconds.
Okay.
Anything over about 90 seconds isn't because of the emotion. It's because of the story that you're telling yourself about the emotion that causes the cycle to go again. It's the interference pattern. You see, everyone thinks that emotion is its own thing, but emotion is not real.
Okay.
Emotion in and of itself, I can argue either way, but emotion for this sake isn't real.
Okay.
Emotion is a physical feeling in the body.
Energy in motion, emotion.
And then a story you tell yourself about the feeling you have.
Okay.
I have a speedy feeling in here. I'm feeling anxious. The anxiety increases. I shouldn't feel anxious.
Can I pause you right there? Because I this is something that I bring up constantly about that pit in your stomach, and you get to make a choice because the physical manifestation of fear and excitement physically feels the same.
Right.
right? Is that what you're talking? Is that the dynamic you're talking about?
Because you tell yourself the story. If instead you go, I'm excited about this.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you start having positive associations, which light up more positive feelings, which then spread the positive feelings out. The initial feeling in and of itself is the exact same. It's the story you tell yourself and the interference pattern between the story and the body, the mental and the physical. That interference pattern is what we call emotion.
Interesting. So, to be completely obnoxious, but also intentional here, is there a means by which you can create a positive correlation to a physical manifestation of pain?
Yeah. It's called working out.
Touche. Okay.
A positive response to a negative feeling of pain. In order for your muscles to grow, you tear them down. So you go to the gym and you get the burn. And you go, oh yeah, this feels so great. You're fucking hurting yourself.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, yeah, it feels good. No, it doesn't. But you know the result. And the result, you have a positive correlation and you get to a point that you like it because it's been positively reinforced.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay. Well done. Well done. The other thing that we've been through up to this point is taking at the surface level, a extravagant goal and then chipping away at it until it becomes manageable. Is that like, where do I want to go with this? Through that process, because it makes, like, in my experience with you going through this process, it also, well, let me backtrack. The arbitrariness of goal setting.
Yes.
That you alluded to a little bit earlier. What are the instruments that you go through to identify whether or not somebody's goal that they sit down with you initially is actually theirs? Because I go back to the test drive analogy, right? The Lamborghini is like the goal. It is a sign of success, right? It is, something that, you see it in all the stupid Facebook ads and stuff like that. You want the fly car? Do what I did, right? So if that becomes imprinted early enough, you strive for the Lamborghini, but nothing inside of you tells you to go test drive that damn thing, right?
Right.
So what happens if you do achieve enough success, enough money at some point to afford a Lamborghini? You get it, you sit in it, you realize you hate driving it or you don't fit, right? You were chasing somebody else's goal.
Yeah.
And at no point along the way did you substantiate whether or not it's something that you actually wanted to achieve. When in actuality, you could have had a 4Runner years ago and been just as happy as the dude driving that Lambo, right?
Yeah.
How do you help somebody do that?
So in order to know if a goal is a good goal for you, you have to know who you are. And so one of the processes I use is to help people identify their values, deep unconscious patterns that motivate and drive you. Go through a values elicitation. From the values, we're able to find out what is your actual purpose in that area of your life. Then you write your mission. Okay, if you're living your purpose, how do these values play into that? Now you have your purpose, your mission, and your values. Come up with a vision for where you want to head. That's the long aim. Where am I going?
Yep.
At that point, it's easy to go. Is this goal really get you there or not? I mean, it's that simple. Is this goal in line with who you are? Now, business owners, your company isn't you. You got to do the same process for your company. Yeah, it should support you as well.
Right. Let's step into that.
Okay.
So,
companies, oftentimes business owners, believe that when they set a goal, they're setting a goal for the company, when really what they're doing is they're setting a goal for themselves because they identify who they are with the company they're running. So my goal in career is that my company's going to, that's your goal. That's not your company's goal.
Mm-hmm.
But according to the federal government, at least here in the U.S., your company has a social security number called the EIN.
Mm-hmm.
Same number of digits.
Right.
It's a living, breathing person. It should have its own purpose. It should have its own mission. It should have its own values. When you set a goal as a company,
Mm-hmm.
your goal as a person should support the company. Just like any employee you have, you'd
Mm-hmm.
want their goal in the company to support the company's, right?
Right.
But your goal is not the company's goal.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you think that they're the same, you can't allow the company to grow away from you. Because if it gets away from you, it can't exist because it's not its own thing.
Right. Okay.
You got to cut the cord at some point, dude.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're digging up, you know, how do you know if a goal is a good goal for you or for your company?
Mm-hmm.
Is does it line up with who you are? Being first, doing, having. Be, do, have. Are you being who you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it that you want to be? What do you need to do in order to get that? And what will you have when you're doing the things you need to do in order to be the person you want to be?
Yeah.
I mean, I keep going back and forth to health because health is something that I've studied extensively just because I was fat and I was tired of being fat. So I had to learn a lot. But in that instance, I want to have a certain lifestyle. But in order to have that lifestyle, I have to do certain activities. But in order to do those certain activities, I have to be motivated.
Mm-hmm.
The motivation stems from who I am. Who I am allows me to do the things that I do. Because if I wasn't me, I couldn't do everything that I do.
Sure.
So who I am allows me to do the things I need to do, which will allow me to have the things I want to have.
Mm. And by being who you are, doing what you have to have the things that you want to have, we went through an exercise where I wrote my goal in present tense in the future.
Yes.
And I feel like I've done that exercise before, but after going through all the things that you just mentioned, the value evaluation, the purpose, the mission, the vision, all of those things, and getting context on my hang-up so I could let that shit go. When I rewrote my story, in the present tense, in the future, as if I had already achieved it.
Past tense.
Yeah. I was able to write that narrative with so much clarity. It was insane. Like, as I'm writing it, I literally felt like I was in the dream house, like waking up to my perfect day. And that's an exercise that I've actually put my clients through on the business consulting side. Write out your perfect day. Because again, the whole arbitrariness of goal setting, right? I want to make $1 million. Well, what the fuck does that do for you? Does it take $1 million to achieve your perfect day? If so, let's fucking go for it. If not, well, let's figure out like what your there's the cause and effect thing, right?
Exactly.
And but after going through everything, which this is why I'm so like bought in on NLP, going through the process that we've gone through and all those steps. I mean, this breakthrough session is 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about like 7 hours to get to this point. And in that 8th hour, writing that narrative is like, oh my God, like I now know exactly what I want. And up to this point, I've never been able to say that with absolute clarity.
Right. It's fascinating because the unconscious mind cannot tell the difference really between something that's vividly imagined or actively experienced. Because like I said, when you are processing your reality, it's actually delayed because it's deleted, distorted, and generalized, which means you're already making up what you think is real. So if that's the case, if you vividly imagine something, it becomes a memory. It becomes something that's real. And if you get far enough away from the time that you imaged it, you can actually start to lose whether or not it was real or whether or not you imagined it, which we've all had those dreams where like, did I dream that or did that really happen?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same kind of concept. The process I walk you through with that is I have you write it in the past tense, but I have you go into a level of detail. There is a flip point in the level of detail that you go into. And I ask questions of my clients and you get to this certain point, and at some point it's like, okay, so I want to be a personal trainer. Okay, so tell me about somebody you trained. Okay, there was a woman. Okay, what was her name? Sarah. Okay, Sarah. And they start telling me about Sarah. I'm like, oh, how old is Sarah? How many kids does she have? What's her favorite color? And I start asking questions that at some point I could ask them any question and they could answer it because their brain goes, got it, memory. And so at that point, it becomes real, where I could ask you any question. It actually comes a lot from my nephews.
Okay.
The biggest problem people have is they grow up. They get so worried about what's real, what's right, that they quit thinking about what's possible. Kids are like, oh, look, I've got this magic thing. It is real to them.
Yep.
But in order for anyone to create something, it first has to be imaged in the mind before it can be manifested or created.
Right. Yep.
Wallace D. Wattles, The Science of Getting Rich. There's a thinking stuff from which all things are made, in which in its original states permeates, penetrates the interspaces of the universe, and a thought impressed upon the substance caused the thing that's thought about to be created. If you create something in your mind and you make it possible, which is another exercise I had you walk through. Because first you have to make it so that it happened. Then you go, okay, now it's possible, but now let's make it plausible. Then let's make it real. Right?
Right.
At some point you couldn't walk. It was impossible, and now you're walking and you don't think about it. At some point you couldn't tie your shoe. You're sitting there, your tongue hanging out, and now you tie it, you don't think about it.
Right.
You've accomplished impossible things your whole life. Your entire life, you've accomplished things you would never be able to do. The problem is, at some point, somebody told you, yes, you can. Now you have to listen to yourself go, yes, you can.
Fuck. That's crazy. The idea that we've been doing impossible things our whole life. Like, you don't have to be an outlier to accomplish the impossible. We are all capable. Like, that's what I gather from that. That's what I take away from that.
That's the purpose of my company. That's actually our purpose statement is to redefine impossible.
Which, brings up a very interesting point in that in writing that narrative in the future, but in the past tense, it makes everything in between, like everything that if it seemed risky, right, and that's why you haven't done it, right, it makes it worthwhile. Like, I've now identified everything between here and January 3rd, as I've identified in my story. Like, everything that I would consider a risk between now and then is necessary.
Right.
I don't get to that January 3rd, 2020 narrative without the shit that makes me uncomfortable along the way. So let's fucking go.
Right. And the second thing is that because you wrote the story in past tense and you made it real, now when you run into an obstacle that you already foresaw, you also had to come up with a story, because if you're making the story up that you achieved it, that presupposes you overcame the obstacle that you already knew you were going to face, which presupposes that you have a solution, which then causes you to find a solution that you already know exists. Because quite frankly, most of us know how to solve the problems we're facing. We're just scared to do it. Because what if it doesn't work out? But you already know the solution. So now if you go after you've already created success and you look back, you go, oh shit, that's how I did it. And then you go, oh, I actually know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because it's nothing I taught you. I didn't tell you what to do. I didn't tell you how to overcome any of these problems.
Right.
All of this stuff. It's like, I got it. Why? Because you already had all the resources you need to achieve any goal you wanted to achieve. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had the idea of having the goal. If you didn't already know how to achieve it, you wouldn't have been able to conceive it.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to put it, because the typical way of thinking, and I say typical because that's the way I used to think, was that it was the reverse.
That's how old people think, not how kids think. And I find that people are more successful if they don't grow up.
Mm.
You know the differences between a kid and an adult?
Mm.
A kid knows they're pretending. An adult doesn't.
That's deep.
A kid knows they're making stuff up. At some point, you have convinced yourself of the lie. That reality is real.
So, with legacy of results, redefining impossible, what is the mission?
To create a movement of total health, wealth, and prosperity. To create an opportunity. I mean, for me, there's a moment of awe in a child's eye when it goes from I can't to I could. That's what it's about. That's the mission.
Okay.
Because like I said, that woman who lost her goddaughter, who never thought she'd be able to smile again.
Yeah.
Laughing and telling me stories. A guy who has PTSD for 30 years and 6.5 hours, it's gone, right? A company, I do a lot more corporate consulting now, and a lot of the corporations, it's like, we've been doing this the same way for this long, right? And you keep getting the same results.
Right.
Yeah, but we just can't change. Can't is a construct where you're limiting yourself based upon what you think you can and can't do. Again, you're pretending that it's real when really it's not.
Sure.
An adult doesn't know that they're not pretending. So for me, the vision or the mission of Legacy of Results is to help people accomplish their impossible. That's what it boils down to. It's like our tagline. It's like, it's possible.
Yeah.
Because I don't care what you have. And I've been saying that I remember when I first started working at Boeing, I did some trainings and stuff. And they said, what's the one thing? I said, give me something that's impossible. Anything. Give me something that's impossible. I'll come up with a plausible solution that we'll have to go, yeah, I guess that would work. Give me anything. Like, give me something. Give me something that's impossible.
Oh, shit. Something that's impossible. We'll just go with the physical world. Something impossible. I'm looking at that pool table over there, and I'm trying to think of something to do with them balls. Impossible. Making that 9 ball in the corner pocket just disappear.
Not a problem. Close your eyes. That was simple. It's not in your reality. It disappeared. No, it's still there. How do you know? Prove it. Right? You get somebody who goes, oh, flying. Cool. Airplane. Well, no. Flying without an airplane. Cool. Helicopter. Okay, fine. Flying without the aid of a mechanical device. Cool. Bird suit. Okay, flying buck naked. Awesome. Outer space. You're dead, but you're flying.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The problem is you get so wrapped up in why it can't work instead of finding the solution that does work.
Sure.
You said you want to make the ball disappear. That's presupposing that the ball is a physical matter and I have to do something to the ball. But really, in order for it to disappear, that presupposes it's not in your awareness. So then I can go, okay, so how can I make that ball disappear?
Sure.
It's fine. Can you see it?
Right.
How do you know it's there?
Man.
Every impossible exists because of the context and structure in which you're holding it.
Mm-hmm.
If I can understand your reality,
Yep.
if you can understand how you're creating your reality,
Mm-hmm.
anything's possible.
Right.
Just tear down the wall.
Love it. Love it. That's a good place to stop, man. I mean, we just proved that the impossible is possible.
Reality is not real, and the
it.
impossible is possible. Good place to be.
Where can everybody find and support Legacy of Results and you?
Find me on Facebook, like Alex Aanderud, which you won't be able to find. Legacy of Results, which you will be able to find. So if you got legacyresults.com, you can find me. I've got Twitter. I'm starting to do some other stuff. But legacyresults.com is pretty much the best place to find me.
Sweet. Everybody out there in 20%er land, my new tribe, I really appreciate you guys riding with us. Get out there and support everything that Alex has going on. Support the mission, vision, and purpose of Legacy of Results. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube at 20%ers and follow 20%ers on Instagram. It's at 20_ and then percenters spelled out. And until next time, guys, focus on what matters: health, wealth, relationships, and time. We'll talk to you later.